I was reaching for the organic strawberries when a tiny hand grabbed mine. The touch was soft, insistent, like a butterfly landing on your palm and refusing to leave. "Mommy," the little girl said, her voice bright with recognition. I smiled nervously at what I assumed was a simple mistake, but then her father appeared at the end of the aisle. The moment he saw me, his face turned white as chalk. He stood there, frozen, a box of crackers slipping from his hand and hitting the floor with a sharp crack. "No," he whispered, his eyes locked on mine. "That's not possible." "My name is Mira Bellwood. I'm 35 years old and I teach art to second graders at Willowbrook Elementary." The man staring at me like he'd seen a ghost was Jonah Fairmont, the person I'd once planned to marry 15 years ago. Between us stood a copper-haired little girl who couldn't have been more than 4 years old, her small fingers still wrapped around mine with surprising strength. The Saturday morning shoppers moved around us like water around stones, but time seemed to stop in our small corner of the produce section. Jonah's gaze dropped to his wrist, to the silver watch catching the fluorescent lights. My stomach dropped. I knew that watch. I'd saved for months to buy it for his 22nd birthday, had it engraved with the words, "Forever starts now." The little girl tugged on my hand again. "Mommy, why won't you look at me? Are you mad because I didn't clean my room?" Behind us, I heard the steady beep of the checkout scanners suddenly stop. Delia, the college student who worked weekend shifts, had frozen mid-scan, a jar of pasta sauce suspended in her hand as she watched our strange tableau unfold. "Rosie," Jonah finally managed to say, his voice cracking, "Sweetheart, come here." But Rosie Fairmont, this child I'd never seen before in my life, only held tighter to my hand. Her green eyes were exact replicas of the ones staring at me from across the produce display. She had Jonah's eyes, Jonah's stubborn chin, but her hair? That copper color struck me like a physical blow. It was the exact shade mine had been before I'd started highlighting it blonde 5 years ago. "Daddy said you went to heaven," Rosie announced to me with the matter-of-fact tone only a 4-year-old could manage. "But you're here buying strawberries. Heaven doesn't have grocery stores. I asked Father Michael and he said so." The grocery store felt too bright suddenly, the overhead music too loud. An elderly woman with her cart full of cat food had stopped to watch. 2 teenage boys with their energy drinks were whispering and pointing. The normal Saturday morning shopping crowd was transforming into an audience, and I was center stage in a drama I didn't understand. Jonah took a step forward, then stopped. His veterinarian's coat was peeking out from under his jacket, the one with Dr. Fairmont embroidered on the pocket. So he'd made it through vet school after all. When we'd been together, he'd been struggling with organic chemistry, and I'd spent countless nights helping him study, making flashcards, brewing pot after pot of coffee. "Mira," he said my name like a prayer or maybe a curse. "How are you here? How are you alive?" The words hit me like ice water. Alive? Of course I was alive. I'd been nothing but alive for the past 15 years, building a life in Portland, getting my teaching degree, learning to make ceramics on weekends, adopting a grumpy cat named Biscuit, moving back to town 3 years ago when the teaching position opened up. "I think there's been some mistake," I said, trying to keep my voice steady for the little girl's sake. She was watching the adults with the sharp awareness children have when they know something important is happening. "Mistake?" Jonah's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Celia held your memorial service. We all went. Your parents? They moved away right after. Said they couldn't bear to stay in town with all the memories." Celia. Her name hit me like a slap. My former best friend. The woman I'd found in Jonah's apartment that night 15 years ago, wearing the engagement ring he'd supposedly been saving to give me. "What memorial service?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "I'm standing right here. I teach at Willowbrook. I buy groceries at this store every Saturday. I'm pretty sure dead people don't need organic strawberries for their grandmother's shortcake recipe." Rosie looked between us, her little face scrunched in confusion. "Daddy, is this my mommy or not? She looks just like the picture in your special drawer, the one you kiss goodnight sometimes when you think I'm sleeping." The silence that followed her innocent words was deafening. Even the background store music seemed to pause. Delia had completely abandoned her register now and I could see her manager starting to walk over, probably wondering why checkout lane 3 had ground to a halt. Jonah's face cycled through emotions like a flipbook: shock, confusion, anger, grief, and something that looked terrifyingly like hope. The watch on his wrist caught the light again, and I noticed his hands were trembling. 15 years, he whispered. For 15 years, I've believed you were dead. I married her, Mira. I married Celia because she said she needed me after losing her best friend. She helped me grieve you. She picked out your headstone. My headstone. The words should have been absurd, laughable even. But the raw pain in his voice, the confusion in this little girl's eyes, the way everyone in the store was staring at us like we were living out some impossible moment, none of it was funny. Well, I said, looking down at Rosie's hopeful face, then back at Jonah's shattered expression, I think we need to talk. Saturday mornings had become my sanctuary. I'd wake at 7, no alarm needed, and spend the first hour in my kitchen nook with a cup of lavender tea and a stack of my students' artwork. This morning had been especially peaceful. 8-year-old Marcus had finally mastered mixing green without turning it into brown mud. Sarah Chen had painted a dragon that actually looked like a dragon instead of a spicy snake, as she'd been calling her previous attempts. These small victories filled my quiet apartment above Moretti's bakery with a warm sense of purpose. The smell of fresh bread always drifted up through the floorboards on Saturday mornings. Mr. Moretti started his ovens at 4 a.m., and by 7, the whole building smelled like heaven. It was one of the reasons I'd chosen this apartment when I moved back to Hartwell 3 years ago. That, and the way the morning light streamed through the bay window, perfect for my weekend painting sessions. I'd spent the previous evening grading finger paintings and preparing next week's lesson on primary colors. My students at Willowbrook Elementary were diving into color theory, which meant my hands were perpetually stained with acrylic paint, and my teacher's apron looked like a Jackson Pollock original. I loved every messy minute of it. The decision to make my grandmother's strawberry shortcake had come while flipping through her old recipe box. Grammy Rose had passed 5 years ago, but her handwritten recipe card still smelled faintly of her vanilla perfume. The strawberry shortcake card was splattered with decades-old batter stains and notes in her careful cursive, extra cream for Mira's birthday, and double berries when they're in season. Hartwell's Market was a 10-minute walk from my apartment, just enough time to enjoy the spring morning. The town hadn't changed much in my absence. The same elm trees lined Main Street, their leaves just starting to unfurl in the early May warmth. The Methodist church still needed a new coat of paint. The park where Jonah and I used to feed ducks still had the same creaky swings. I pushed that thought away as I grabbed a shopping basket at the store entrance. I'd become an expert at not thinking about Jonah Fairmont over the years. It was a skill I'd perfected in Portland, where every veterinary clinic sign didn't make my chest tight, where every dark-haired man didn't make me do a double take. "Morning, Miss Bellwood," Delia called from Register 3, her psychology textbook propped open beside the scanner. She was a sophomore at the community college, working weekends to pay for school. Teaching those kids to paint masterpieces? Always trying Delia. "How's your psychology class going?" She groaned dramatically. Professor Martinez assigned a 20-page paper on behavioral conditioning. I'm basically living at the library. "Pavlov would be proud," I said, making her laugh. "Ring a bell every time you finish a page. Reward yourself with chocolate." "You're a genius, Miss B." This was my life now. Simple conversations, terrible psychology jokes, teaching children to see the world in colors beyond the basic 8-pack of crayons. I'd built something good here, something steady and predictable, after the chaos of that night 15 years ago. The produce section at Hartwell's was particularly good on Saturdays. Jorge, the produce manager, always put out the fresh deliveries on Friday night. I headed straight for the strawberries, running through Grammy's recipe in my head. 2 pounds of berries, heavy cream, the good vanilla extract from the specialty shop on 3rd Street. The strawberries were perfect, deep red and fragrant, still carrying drops of morning mist. I was reaching for a second container when I noticed a young father and daughter by the apple display. She was sitting in the cart, swinging her legs, while he carefully selected Honeycrisps. The domestic simplicity of it made me smile. This was the kind of quiet moment I'd learned to appreciate in my 30s, the small sweetness of ordinary life. I had no idea that in exactly 43 seconds, That ordinary life would shatter like one of my students' ceramic projects, hitting the art room floor. No idea that the past I'd carefully buried in Portland would resurrect itself between the strawberries and the bananas, wearing a veterinarian's coat and carrying 15 years of lies. The store's speaker system was playing an old Fleetwood Mac song. The irony wouldn't hit me until later. Sweet little lies, indeed. The strawberry container was cool against my palm when I felt the tug on my sundress. It was gentle but insistent, the way children touch things when they want attention but have been taught not to grab. I looked down to find a little girl staring up at me with the most striking green eyes I'd ever seen. No, that wasn't true. I'd seen those exact eyes before, had watched them crinkle with laughter, had seen them darken with desire, had last seen them filled with guilt 15 years ago. Mommy? Her voice was clear as a bell, confident in a way that made my heart stutter. I carefully set down the strawberries and knelt to her level. She was beautiful, maybe 4 years old, wearing a purple dress with unicorns prancing across the hem. Her copper curls caught the fluorescent lights, creating a halo effect that would have challenged my best art students. "Oh, sweetie, I think you've got the wrong person. Where's your mommy?" Her face transformed, confusion sliding into distress with the quick change intensity only small children can manage. "You are my mommy. Daddy said you went to heaven, but you're here." Her small fingers wrapped around mine with surprising strength. "I knew the angels would bring you back. I prayed every single night, just like Grandma Eileen taught me." The words hit me in waves. Daddy, heaven, angels, each one more impossible than the last. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of this child who looked at me like I was her whole world come back to life. "Rosie, there you are. I told you to stay by the apples while I got the milk." The voice cut through the produce section like a blade through silk. I didn't need to look up. That voice had whispered promises in the dark, had said, "I love you" every morning for 3 years, had been stumbling through an excuse when I'd found him with Celia. But I looked anyway, and there was Jonah Fairmont holding a gallon of 2% milk like it was an anchor in a storm. The milk slipped from his hand. It hit the floor with a thick thud, the plastic splitting just enough to send a white river flowing across the green tiles. Neither of us moved to stop it. "Mira?" My name came out of him like a ghost story, like something whispered around a campfire to scare children. "Hello, Jonah." I was proud of how steady my voice sounded, even as Rosie's hand tightened in mine. "But you died. The accident. They told me you died." His face had gone the color of the spilled milk, his eyes moving frantically between my face and his daughter's hand in mine. Then his gaze caught on something else, dropping to his wrist where silver glinted under the store lights. The watch. Of course he still wore it, the Seiko I'd saved for months to buy, staying late at the campus bookstore, picking up extra shifts at the coffee shop. I'd had it engraved at the little jewelry store on 5th Street. "Forever starts now. Love M." "What accident? What are you talking about?" My voice was sharper now, cutting through whatever shock had been keeping me calm. Around us, the Saturday morning shopping crowd had begun to notice our strange drama. An older woman with a cart full of cat food had stopped mid-reach for the green beans. 2 teenage boys holding energy drinks were whispering and pointing. Jorge had emerged from the back room with a price gun, frozen in the act of marking down yesterday's bananas. "Daddy, why can't Mommy come home with us?" Rosie's voice pierced the tension. "I cleaned my room and ate all my vegetables last night. I've been really, really good." Jonah's hands were shaking as he reached for his daughter. "Rosie, sweetheart, we need to go." "No!" She pressed closer to me, her free arm wrapping around my leg. "Mommy's here. She's not in heaven anymore. You said the angels took her, but they brought her back." Delia had abandoned her register entirely now, her psychology textbook forgotten as she watched us with wide eyes. Her manager, Mr. Peterson, was walking over with the determined stride of someone who sensed a disturbance in his carefully ordered store. "Celia held your memorial service," Jonah said, his voice breaking on each word. "Your parents moved away right after. She said you'd been driving too fast in the rain, that you hit a tree on Route 49. She had documentation, photos of the wreck. We all went to the service. I threw dirt on your casket, Mira. I threw dirt on your casket." The world tilted. Celia, my best friend since 4th grade, the woman who'd been my maid of honor in waiting, who'd helped me pick out wedding venues, who'd held my hand through every relationship before Jonah. The woman I'd found in his bed that night, wearing nothing but guilt and my engagement ring. "We need to talk, but not here," Jonah said, glancing at the growing crowd of onlookers. Mr. Peterson was now just 3 aisles away, his manager's instinct for trouble fully activated. The spilled milk had created a white lake between us, and Jorge had appeared with a mop bucket, looking uncertain about whether to clean up or keep watching. "I don't owe you anything, Jonah. Not a conversation, not an explanation, nothing." The words came out harder than I intended, but 15 years of carefully rebuilt life was crumbling around me, and this man had been the wrecking ball that started it all. Rosie began to cry. Not the manipulative tears some children deploy like weapons, but the genuine, heartbroken sobs of a child whose world wasn't making sense. "Please don't go away again, Mommy. Please, I'll be better. I won't ask for stories at bedtime anymore. I won't spill my juice." Each promise broke my heart a little more. This child, this innocent little girl, had been living with the ghost of a mother who wasn't even dead. My anger at Jonah, at the situation, at the sheer impossibility of it all, dissolved in the face of her desperation. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Okay, we can talk. Outside." Jonah scooped up Rosie, who immediately reached for me over his shoulder. I grabbed my purse, abandoning Grammy's strawberries and my normal Saturday routine. Mr. Peterson intercepted us at the door. "Is everything all right here? Delia said there was some kind of disturbance?" "Family matter," Jonah said quickly. "Sorry about the milk. Send me the cleaning bill." Outside, the May sunshine felt too bright after the fluorescent store lights. Rosie had calmed to hiccups, her face buried in Jonah's shoulder, but her eyes never leaving me. We stood awkwardly by his car, a sensible SUV with a "proud parent of a Hartwell preschool star student" bumper sticker. "Start talking," I said, "and make it make sense, because right now I'm 5 seconds away from calling the police and reporting identity theft, fraud, and whatever else Celia did to convince an entire town I was dead." Jonah shifted Rosie to his hip, his veterinarian's coat bunching around her. "That night after you left, Celia came back to my apartment. She was hysterical, said you'd called her, that you were driving too fast, upset, not thinking clearly. Then she got another call saying you'd crashed on Route 49. I took a bus to Portland. I never even owned a car back then." "She had documents, Mira. A death certificate, photos of a wrecked Honda Civic, even a copy of the accident report. Your parents identified the body. There was a closed casket because they said the damage was too severe." My knees felt weak. My parents are alive and well in Florida. I talked to my mother last Sunday about her new watercolor class. His face went through another series of transformations. "They moved 2 weeks after the funeral. Said they couldn't bear to stay where everything reminded them of you. Celia helped them pack. She was so kind to them, so supportive." The picture was becoming clearer, and it was uglier than anything I could have imagined. Celia hadn't just stolen my fiancé. She'd stolen my entire existence, erased me from my own life, and stepped into the space I'd left behind. "Let me guess," I said, the bitterness sharp on my tongue. "She was there to comfort you in your grief, to help you through the loss of your one true love." "We got married 2 years later." His voice was hollow. "She said you would have wanted us to find happiness together, that you'd told her once if anything ever happened to you, she should take care of me." "I never said that. I never said anything like that." I looked at Rosie, who was watching me with those impossible green eyes. "When was she born?" 4 years ago. Celia died last year. Breast cancer. It was quick." He paused, swallowing hard. "Rosie's been asking about her mommy in heaven ever since. But she's not asking about Celia. She's always asking about you. Celia kept photos of you hidden in the house. Rosie found them. She's been obsessed with the pretty lady who looked like her." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling my mother right now. We're going to sort this out." "Mira, wait." He caught my arm gently, then immediately let go when I flinched. "There's more. About Rosie. About why she looks like you. Celia couldn't have children. We used a donor egg. She insisted on choosing the donor herself, said she wanted someone who looked like her so the baby would fit in with the family." The final piece clicked into place with sickening clarity. "She chose someone who looked like me." "I think so. The donor profile. Auburn hair, green eyes, Irish ancestry, even the same blood type as you. She said it was coincidence. I dialed my mother's number with shaking fingers while Jonah stood there holding Rosie, who had gone quiet with the intense focus children have when they know something important is happening. The phone rang once, twice, and then my mother's warm voice filled the air through the speaker. "Mira, honey, how's my favorite artist? Did you try that new watercolor technique I sent you?" "Mom, I need you to listen carefully. I'm here with Jonah Fairmont." The silence that followed was deafening. Then I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath, followed by what sounded like a chair scraping against the floor. Oh my God, Mira, is he there? Can he hear me?" "You're on speaker, Mom." "Jonah?" My mother's voice cracked. "Is it really you?" "Hello, Mrs. Bellwood." Jonah's voice was barely above a whisper. "I thought you moved away after Mira's funeral, after the accident." The sound that came through the phone was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "What funeral? What accident? Mira, what is he talking about?" "Mom, Jonah says Celia told everyone I died in a car accident 15 years ago. He says you and Dad identified my body and moved away after my funeral." That lying witch! The venom in my mother's voice made Rosie's eyes go wide. My mother, who volunteered at the church library and made cookies for every bake sale, never spoke ill of anyone. She told us you never wanted to see us again. She had a letter in your handwriting saying you blamed us for not seeing through Jonah's character. She said you needed space to heal, that you'd moved to Portland and would contact us when you were ready. I sank onto the curb, my legs no longer able to hold me. She forged a letter? "We tried calling you for months. Your number was disconnected. Celia said you'd changed it, that she was the only one you trusted to have the new one. She'd give us updates, tell us you were doing well but weren't ready to talk. After a year, your father said we had to respect your wishes. We moved to Florida to start fresh, but honey, we never stopped hoping you'd call." Jonah had gone pale again. He set Rosie down carefully and she immediately came to sit beside me on the curb, her little hand finding mine again. "Mrs. Bellwood," Jonah said slowly, "Celia showed me a death certificate. She had an accident report. There were photos of a wrecked car. The whole town attended the memorial service." "Then she killed someone else." My mother's voice was fierce. "Or faked it all. That girl was capable of anything. She came to our house the night Mira left, crying and carrying on about how it was all her fault, how she'd tried to resist you but couldn't help herself. She made us comfort her, the husband-stealing snake." "The donor," I said suddenly, the pieces clicking together with horrible clarity. "Jonah, you said Celia chose an egg donor who looked like me. What if she didn't choose someone who looked like me? What if she chose me, Mas? That's not possible. You would have known. The clinic would have required consent forms, medical histories." I thought back to my time in Portland, specifically to my junior year when money had been tight. I donated eggs once to pay for art supplies and rent. It was anonymous through a clinic in Portland. They said the eggs would go to families in other states to maintain anonymity. Jonah fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking. The clinic Celia used was in Portland. She said she had a friend there who could help expedite the process. "Are you my real mommy?" Rosie asked, looking up at me with those eyes that were so much like her father's, but set in a face that could have been mine at that age. My mother was crying openly now through the speaker. "She stole everything. Your life, your parents, your future children. She orchestrated all of it." "The watch," Jonah said suddenly, looking at his wrist. "She told me to keep wearing it. Said you would have wanted me to remember the good times, but it stopped working the day she died. Stopped at 11:11. "That was our time," I whispered. "I used to make wishes at 11:11. Said it was when angels listened closest." Rosie perked up. "Angels, that's what Daddy says about you, that the angels took you to heaven, but I knew they'd bring you back. I wished on every 11:11 just like the pretty lady in the pictures." The truth sat between us like a living thing, ugly and beautiful at once. Celia had stolen 15 years from all of us. She'd robbed my parents of their daughter, robbed me of my family, robbed Jonah of the truth, and most heartbreakingly, she'd robbed Rosie of her biological mother while letting her grieve a stranger. The pictures, Jonah said quietly. Celia kept albums hidden in the attic. After she died, Rosie found them. Dozens of photos of you from college, from high school, even from our engagement party. Rosie's been carrying one in her backpack ever since. She kisses it goodnight. Just like you do with the one in your special drawer, Rosie added helpfully. Standing in that grocery store parking lot, 3 lives had been shattered and rebuilt in the span of 30 minutes. My mother was still on the phone, making plans to drive up from Florida immediately. "We'll be there by tomorrow night," she said, her voice fierce with 15 years of stolen time. "And Mira, honey, we're never letting anyone keep us apart again." Jonah looked like a man who'd been underwater for years and just broke the surface. Every emotion possible crossed his face as he processed the magnitude of Celia's deception. His entire marriage, his grief, his daughter's origin story, all of it built on lies so elaborate they'd required a fake death to maintain. "I need to see those documents," I said, standing up and brushing off my sundress. "The death certificate, the accident report, all of it. If Celia went to these lengths, we need to know if someone else was hurt. We need the truth." Rosie stood with me, still holding my hand. "Does this mean you're coming home with us?" I knelt down to her level, looking into those green eyes that were so much like Jonah's, but set in a face that could have been mine at 4 years old. "Sweetheart, this is all very complicated. I'm not going anywhere, but we need to take things slow, okay? Your daddy and I have a lot to figure out." "But you're my real mommy? The egg lady?" The innocence of her question made me smile despite everything. It looks like I might be, biologically, but the mommy who raised you, who loved you every day, that was Celia, and that love was real, even if other things weren't. Jonah cleared his throat. "Mira, I know you don't owe me anything. What I did 15 years ago was unforgivable. But for Rosie's sake, could we maybe start with coffee? Next week, while she's at preschool? We can figure out how to move forward, what to tell her, how to handle all of this." I looked at this man I'd once loved, who'd broken my heart so thoroughly I'd fled town on a Greyhound bus with just 2 suitcases and my grandmother's recipe box. He wasn't the same cocky college boy who'd thought he could have everything. Lines of grief and genuine love for his daughter had changed his face. The watch on his wrist, stopped at 11:11, seemed like a sign even Grammy Rose would have appreciated. "Coffee," I agreed. "Tuesday after I finish teaching. But Jonah, I need you to understand something. I built a good life without you. I'm not the same 20-year-old who ran away. I'm a teacher now. I have an apartment, a cranky cat named Biscuit, and students who depend on me. Whatever happens next, it has to be on my terms." "I understand. And Mira, I'm sorry. Not just for what Celia did, but for what I did that started all of this. I was young and stupid, and I threw away the best thing in my life for something that was never real." A month later, I stood in my art classroom preparing for the day's lesson when the kindergarten teacher knocked on my door. "Special delivery," she said with a knowing smile. Behind her, a line of 5-year-olds filed in for our monthly joint art project, and there, at the end of the line, was Rosie. She broke from the group and ran to me, a painted canvas clutched in her hands. "Miss Mira, I made you a picture." I took the painting, my throat tight with emotion. It was a family portrait in the bold, confident strokes only a child could make. A little girl with wild copper curls, a tall man with dark hair, and a woman who looked like the child. At the bottom, in shaky letters, she'd written, "My new friend who looks like mommy." The truth was, Celia had stolen 15 years from us. She'd woven a web of lies so complex it had rewritten reality for an entire town. But standing there, watching Rosie beam up at me with those familiar green eyes, I realized something Grammy Rose used to say. Sometimes the best blessings come from the worst beginnings. Jonah and I were taking things slow. Coffee had turned into dinner, which had turned into family counseling to navigate the impossible situation we'd found ourselves in. My parents visited every month, making up for lost time with a granddaughter they never knew existed. The DNA test had confirmed what we all suspected. Rosie was biologically mine, conceived from eggs I donated in desperation and implanted by a woman desperate to become me. But Rosie was right in her painting. I wasn't her mommy yet. I was her new friend who looked like mommy. And maybe, with time and patience and a lot of love, I could become something more. The watch that had stopped at 11:11 the day Celia died, Jonah had it repaired. It runs perfectly now, counting new minutes instead of mourning lost years. Because that's what we do with stolen time. We don't get it back, but we make sure not to waste what's left. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we find that what was taken from us wasn't what we were meant to have anyway. Sometimes the life we build from the ashes is stronger than the one that burned. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey today. If this story touched your heart or reminded you that truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep the lies, please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for the truth to set you free. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that prove life is stranger and more beautiful than fiction. Leave a comment below about a time when the truth changed everything in your life. Until next time, remember, every ending is just a beginning in disguise.